Lex, the Hexmaster, and the Shadow Army is a part of Replicon Radio's advertisements.
Okay.
Yeah.
Replicon Radio is brought to you in part by Lex, the Hexmaster, and the Shadow Army.
Right. Good job of hitting the wrong fucking ad button, Paul.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, man, we are back. We're live. Shout out to the sponsors, Lex the Hexmaster and the Shadow Army. Yeah, we appreciate it. There is a new feed up for everybody tuned in to the live version on the website. Go on. You can check out the YouTube as well. Or if you're listening to the replay, we're available everywhere.
Hello, replay.
But yeah, let's jump on into it, man. We have a very special guest on the line with us today.
Super excited.
We're going to learn all about him. He's produced some of your favorites. All kinds of big shit. We're gonna learn what ticks his talks or whatever. I don't know. We're gonna learn all kinds of stuff today. Give it up for our special guest, ZEUSS.
Yeah, what's up, everybody?
Hello, sir.
What's going on?
So
man?
I got Paul. Who else is there?
You got Dead Body Man or Tony here.
And
Tony.
Big Roo. Kenny. Big Roo.
Big Roo?
Yes, sir.
What's up, Roo?
How you doing, brother?
Thank you for being a part of our program.
Yes.
Thank you for taking the time out of your day, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We appreciate you hanging out with us here at Replicon Radio.
Quit messing with the Mars.
I know. Are you good?
Yeah.
Perfect. But yeah, man, we appreciate it. Essentially, we like to have people on. We want to get to know them. We want to learn your story and kind of how it all kind of got started. A lot of people, we have a lot of underground like music, Twisted, ICP, a lot of stuff like that on the show. So some people may not be familiar with you or some of your work. So it's definitely going to be fun for more people to get to know you. But I want to go back to like when you were younger, man. Like what kind of got you into music in general? Like what was your first kind of introduction? Were you always like a rock metal guy, or were you classic rock? Like what kind of led you down the musical path?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it was. It always starts with your parents or who's around you. So early on, they were always playing like the Doors and the Beatles and Led Zeppelin, stuff like that. So it started with that for sure. And then as I got older, we all had turntables, and like little mini stereos back then. So I can remember early on getting like an all-in-one like turntable type of a thing. And I would say the band that really did it for me back then when I was probably, 6 or 7 years old was definitely Kiss.
There you go. Dope. And was it just their like the whole like the theatrics and all the obviously they're entertaining to look at, especially as a child.
I mean, I would say that like just everything about them was just larger than life, because like in the mid to late 70s, like everything had Kiss on it. So like you could get Kiss toothbrushes, Kiss pajamas, like it was just larger than life. So I can remember getting I remember winning their record at like some sort of fair or whatever, and just staring at and it was actually ended up being the first record, even though it wasn't when the first record came out. But that was right after that, I started to play it on my turntable and stuff. And then I was just hooked. So I was like, anything that had Kiss on it, I just wanted it. Yeah. So I can remember getting like Kiss Alive 2 and just playing that nonstop. And kids in my neighborhood would have Kiss records, and we would like trade them and stuff. And, oh, man, I never heard of that one, because I think, at the time there was probably like maybe at least 5 records out. The usuals, Destroyer and Hotter Than Hell and all those. So, so that's definitely where it started for sure.
That's awesome. And then is that so like getting into that and seeing all that stuff, is that where you kind of lent you towards like playing guitar? Like was that kind of your first interest into like actually playing music and performing music, was picking up a guitar?
Well, I would say that came a little bit later. But it definitely sparked an interest. Like I was like, man, that's fucking badass, man. The guitars and the fire and all that stuff. I have an uncle who played guitar, so he was always like, he would bring his guitar to my grandmother's house, and so I was always seeing him, with a guitar and that kind of a thing. But I would say that when I started hanging around with a few friends and they had like older brothers and stuff, then I was like, all right, whoa, like then I, figured out Black Sabbath and Ozzy and Van Halen and Iron Maiden was a huge one for sure. Deep Purple. Let me think. I could keep on going. All that kind of stuff. And so, one of my buddy's fathers had a guitar, and it was laying around. It had a few broken strings on it, and we used to pick that thing up and play around with it. And so then we started to figure out like how to play like Smoke on the Water and like Iron Man from Black Sabbath and stuff like that. So right around there, that was probably like 10 years old or so. And so we just always were like screwing around with that one guitar. It was a Silvertone guitar, which is like, if you know your instruments, it was like made in by Sears.
Oh wow.
So this particular guitar also had an amp that was built into the guitar case. So, and it half-assed worked. It didn't sound that good. So we would figure out ways of like plugging it into the stereo and hitting play and record on the tape deck, and then, turning up the input, and you would get distortion on it and, all that kind of stuff. So right around there. And then with all those records like Iron Maiden and Number of the Beast and stuff like that, Van Halen, like I said, and I can keep on going. There's tons of them. That's when I was like, man, this is it. I want to play guitar.
Yeah, hell yeah, I want to do it. I want to do it too, man. These guys are awesome. I want to do it. So, and a lot of kids, obviously, whatever time period it is, they get into music like that. They want to guitar. Guitar seems to be the the one people go to, obviously, because it sounds so badass.
Well, especially in that time, that was in your face, like, oh shit, these guys are fucking gods. This is cool as shit.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So from there, it was like, all right. So then I finally got a guitar. It was just a cheap, whatever guitar, and then I find out in my neighborhood, like, this other dude's playing drums, and I'm like, whoa! And then his brother's playing guitar, and then there's another kid playing guitar. So that was like right around when I had like my first jam, and I was just like, we just played whatever riff or whatever we could figure out, and nobody was really that good. But like, that's just how you did it,
Wow.
And then from then on, it was like, then you would find, as we would get older, then it was like, all right, then you would find people in other areas that played. So it's like, I can always remember never finding a bass player. So it's like, you start jamming with your buddy on drums, and then maybe there's another guitar player or whatever, and some guy that might sing, and even when that guy was singing, it was like he was plugged into an amp, and it was just totally like, low budget. So no PAs, nothing like that. But I can remember the first time that we found a bass player guy, and he must lived 3 towns over, and I can remember we played Born to Be Wild by Steppenwolf.
Yes.
And it was the song that we all knew. And I remember for the first time ever, I heard bass guitar in our jam. And we're all looking at each other like, this is huge. Because it just fills up the whole sound, and you finally start to sound like a band, Yeah. So
you got the other half of that backbone in there now.
Well, yeah, and later on, and down the line, I ended up learning how to play bass, and that's a whole other discussion. But yeah, so that's a little bit into the insight of that. So I learned guitar primarily on my own. I took lessons for 6 months or something, and I didn't want to learn what was being shown to me. I was like, this sucks.
Right.
It's like, I want to shred. I want to play Eruption and shit. I don't want to play fucking, Mary Had a Little Lamb.
Right. Trying to do these badass solos, man. What is this?
Yeah, man. It's like, I want to get right to the fucking business, man. Show me the shit.
Hell yeah. So did you guys do a band? Did you guys do the band thing for a while? Did you have any success with that?
With the band?
Yeah.
Well, so then as time went on, and I did end up getting in some bands, and we would play, shows and stuff. I was in this band called Doom Nation, at the time. Actually, we were called Doom Patrol, not D-U-N-E, but D-O-O-M Patrol. And we started out as like a cover band, primarily with like a few originals, and we would play like keg parties in people's backyards and small hall shows, stuff like that. And then eventually graduated to playing like clubs and stuff like that. And then as time went on, like people started to really like the band, and so we were like opening up for national artists like Henry Rollins and Overkill and like Helmet and Deftones. We played with them once. So like I did that for quite a while. I was in a couple of other bands as well. And I also was in a recording studio really early on as well. Like probably, I think the first time I went into a recording studio, I was 15 years old.
Oh, wow.
So that experience like really turned me on to that side, which is what I do now. But at the time I was like, this is cool. And I had a lot of interest, but, I primarily wanted to be a guitar player.
Yeah. I'm sure, like, especially at that, I mean, even now for a lot of people, but especially at that age, that's you guys are doing business in there with all those controls. I'm trying to be out here shredding.
Well, yeah. And like back then it was like, and I still use the same philosophy, today is, we had to rehearse, man. We had to fucking practice. We had to know our songs in and out. Then we go into the studio. Then we record. And most of it was done live because you didn't have that many tracks, and even back then, in the late 80s or whatever, like there wasn't that many like 24 track studios around. Like you'd be lucky to find like a 16 track studio. I think the first place that I recorded was an 8 track studio. It was tape. And you had to learn your songs because the tape was rolling. It wasn't, you could maybe punch in some mistakes or stuff like that. But like primarily, like you had to know your shit.
Yeah.
It isn't like now where it's like, you can show up half-assed and the engineer fixes your shit.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. So at 15, so I guess I'll go back to that then. So what
Sure.
were you doing in a recording studio at such a young age? Was it for the band?
So I was like, I think I was a freshman in high school, and these dudes were like, I was hanging out with this guy, and he was a better guitar player than me. So I was like, I'll play bass, man, and he was like, cool, so we started to jam. And I can remember at the time I really wanted to play like heavy shit, like hardcore and metal. And they were like, I can remember one time I was starting to like play the bass, and they're like, no, none of that shit. No, we're not going to be like a metal band. We're going to be like more like a fusion band. I'm like, what the fuck is fusion? Like, like, what do you mean? So then they're like, turning me on to like Weather Report and Jaco Pastorius and all that kind of stuff. Steely Dan and just like musicians rock. Yes, and Rush and stuff like that, progressive stuff. King Crimson, all that kind of stuff. So I was like, oh, and I was like, I'm not really too into this here, but I want to jam with these guys. So I ended up like I said, playing bass, and they were like, well, we're going to go in the studio, and because we were doing originals, like there was no covers, like they were just like, no, we're going to do our own stuff. So they're like, well, we're going to go in the studio. And, so we got to rehearse for the studio. So that's how that all started.
Okay. So just kind of watching the engineer and stuff like that, you're like, it kind of sat.
Well, they're like, all right, click it off. It's like, click it off and here you go. Like, you're fucking recording, man. It's on. So like you play, man. And then, yeah, you're looking at this guy, and I think this place was like in the bottom of a music store. In like the basement, and they had a little control room. It was fucking tiny. Like the whole band could barely fit in there. And there was a little window for isolation. And so, yeah, you see the guy looking at you, and you just got to play, man.
For sure. And so like being a kid and like being around all that, especially with I'm sure they had like the insane boards and a lot of those older studios were like really nice. Cause you had like the reel to reel or the tapes, and it was like acoustic rooms with all the all that stuff. So they're just kind of like stuck in your memory, like as you got older, like something you always thought was
well, it was like I think that what fascinated me about it, and this, like I said, this experience wasn't like what you would think, like you just said. It wasn't like, racks and racks of gear and big tape machines and stuff. It was way more cut down than that. Way more like affordable, and it was like one of the only ones in the area that, you could afford to go to. If you wanted to go into one of those places, like, you needed like shitloads of money to go, and you'd probably have to go to a bigger city. And even if that was available, like, that's probably something that like that band or at that at the time would not have done anyway. So, but I remember hearing it back, and I'm like, is this us? Like, because it sounded super good. Because you're used to hearing like on a we would just record ourselves on a boombox,
right?
And then you hear it back like a fully like drum kit, and like your bass and your guitar is like sounds actually kind of good. So that was like very, very like eye-opening in everything. So as I went along in my other bands and stuff, I did some more recording, and I got more interested in how it worked and stuff. But it was primarily, it all started because as a hobby, I just enjoyed, like, I had a 4-track and I was just recording people for nothing. With very minimal gear in the area, and that's really what did it. It was more, like I said, I'll record your band, like I only have a 4-track and I only have so many mics and stuff, but I can give you like something that'll sound pretty good. And then word kind of spread around the area like that I was doing that, and other people were hitting me up like, hey, you can come to our space and like record us too. So that's primarily how I kicked off getting into the engineering and recording world, was just like jumping right into it.
Just almost by accident, as if it were meant to be.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I said, like I started it because it was fun, and I guess at the time I was just kind of just into both, but I still at the time wanted to be primarily a musician. So
I guess.
It wasn't until later that when things started to roll a little bit more, where I was like, all right, I got to make a decision here. So that comes later.
Okay. So you're doing this, so you're learning as you go, basically, and like hooking people up for free, getting to know all that, but at the same time you're still doing the Doom Patrol, like so did that continue on for a while? Like what was the point where it came down to like, okay, the band thing isn't like the band.
Well, the band.
Let's go to the studio.
Well, that kind of like went where, that we changed the name to Doom Nation, and we were going pretty full speed ahead. And then a couple of the guys in the band, like, because we got to like early 20s. And now they're like, there's a couple of guys that are thinking, what am I going to do in my life? One guy wanted to go to community college. Another guy was like kind of advancing in his job. And so it was starting to change a little bit right around that time. This was probably like the super early 90s. I just wanted to keep doing what I was doing. I was like, I was done. I was like working a shitty job in a factory. And I was just like, this sucks. You know what I mean? I was like, I just want to get out of here and play guitar and whatnot. And so what happened was it kind of just fizzled out. So then I started jamming with some other people, and it was more of like a hardcore band. Well, it was a hardcore band. And I started playing more gigs out of state and regionally, and meeting more people. And then that's when... at the same time, I was still recording, but I kind of graduated to an 8-track machine, and so I had a little bit more capability. So that's when I would start doing some demos for some other bands, and same type of thing. Word kind of spread. So then people are hitting me up. Hey, I heard that the demo from so and so sounds fucking better than our last one. Like, would you be into recording us? And I'd be like, sure. So I kind of continued doing the same thing.
Awesome. So then eventually, I guess you just got so busy because people just kept coming. Like, music had to take it. Like, playing music almost took a back burner because you were so busy. Is that kind
well, it was kind of like, okay, I had my day job, and then I was doing recording on like, you know, nights and the weekends and stuff. I was still in bands, and it was all still like a three-way street. You know, it was kind of like work, recording, and practice and being in the band and stuff. And then the metal and hardcore music in the region kind of started to blow up a little bit out in the Northeast. I would say the Northeast in general, because it wasn't just New England. There was some bands coming out of New York, Connecticut, just the whole Northeast in general. And some bands were getting signed, and there was a lot of activity. The shows were getting bigger. It was just blowing up. It was getting crazy. So then I did some records for some record labels. So it was like this band 100 Demons out in Connecticut. I did this record for them, and that fucking started to blow my name up. And then I started working with this other band in the area called Shadows Fall, which was probably, all this was probably going on in like the end of the 90s, like 96, 97. 95 to like 2000, right in that area. But I was also recording local bands too. So right around that point, I had this place that I started to build into a recording studio, and people were just starting to come to me, especially after I had a couple of records out. So it's just word of mouth from there spread, and I just kept going.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So obviously you're at this point. You're not. You're building a studio. You weren't working on the 4-track thing at your home anymore, right? You're upgrading.
Exactly. So I was actually at one point working out of an apartment, and my landlord was like bashing down the door because I was recording some dude with like a Marshall stack in my apartment. Oh shit! And it was just fucking. It was so fucking loud, and I didn't give a shit because I was like, it's during the day, like, you know, I had all the doors closed, and I had the amp in like a closet and shit, and I'm like, it's probably gonna be all right. Well, the landlord's like bashing on the door, and he's like, "What the fuck is going on in there?" I'm like, "I'm recording guitars." He's like, "I can hear it all the way down the street. You're gonna have to turn it down." So I was like, all right. So I turn it down, and he comes back. He's bashing on the door. He's like, it's too loud. It's like I can hear it all the way, down the road still. And I was like, then he says, "Oh, I got this place that's like a garage in like a more industrial area that you might be interested in, that I got to get a tenant for, and you could probably do that there." And I just look at him, and I'm like, is this for real? Like, is this fucking guy telling me this shit, like, for real? So I was like, yeah, I'll go check it out. So I go down there, and he's like, shows me this place, and I was like, all right, well, if I can like build, like, close off the garage doors and like totally soundproof it and like, make it into a studio. And I don't think the guy really knew exactly what I was talking about, but he's like, yeah, whatever you want. I was like, all right. So that's when I started my studio. And, I kind of, part of the story was earlier where I said, like, I was in the bands and going, playing throughout the area. Yeah. And, so
you knew a lot of people.
So like bands would start to come to me instead of me like going to them.
Absolutely.
But it was still a really like cut down type of a place. It wasn't like, crazy acoustics and, tons of, recording equipment. I had to, save up and buy the next piece. Like, oh, I need more headphones. And I would just rack up a credit card and like buy more stuff and hope that I could pay it off. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So doing that with the local bands, what kind of, was it just word of mouth from like band members, knowing band members that the Good Life Recordings and Century Media with 100 Demons and Shadows Fall got in touch with you? Like,
well, it was more like I did the recording, and they basically had no problem with, like, as long as the quality was good enough, they didn't really care. As far as talking about the label, yeah. And it sounded up to par, you know what I mean? Compared to a lot of the stuff that was coming out at the time. But I guess to answer that question, it was still like a word of mouth I was still doing local stuff, but I would go to the gigs, you know what I mean? Like, you're there and you're mingling with other dudes in bands and stuff. So it's like, you get in conversations. Oh yeah, I heard that record or that, that demo tape or whatever. So even back then there was still tapes.
Yeah.
So everybody was like still like fucking passing out tapes and shit to you. Like, here's my tape. CDs still weren't like a thing yet. Like, they were starting to be a thing, where people started to catch on, but a lot of people were still like making tapes, man. So, but yeah, so those early records were my introduction into like the real world of like, okay, like now these are on record labels. So, you would start to meet those people too. And back then, there would be like metal fests like in New England, and all the label people, or Milwaukee, like we would go to the Milwaukee Metal Fest, travel out there. And, all the label people would be, well, not all of them, but a lot of them would be there, representing the label, like Century Media, Metal Blade, all of those labels, Revelation Records, like all the hardcore, labels and stuff. So, you would get to know people, and, then you'd be like, oh, I did this record, and, like they would just, they would find out who you are, and then it was, word of mouth that way.
That's awesome. So it just kept spreading and spreading and spreading, and you're just becoming busier and busier, and obviously you're
so I mean, look, it's still a hustle, so, you know what I mean?
For sure.
You got to hustle, man. So it's like, and it was still before the internet. So, like, people were still fucking handing out flyers, man.
Absolutely. That's the way it should still be. I miss flyers, man.
You know what? I would love to put a motherfucker into boot camp like I was in, man.
I'll bet, for sure. So this may sound like a stupid question, but I want to hear your. So like I said, I mentioned earlier, we've had several producers and stuff on the show, but a lot of it's hip hop and underground, which is a totally different world. Like, a lot of times when you talk about a producer in hip hop, he made the music, he's making the beats. What? So obviously you're producing, you do mixing, which is in the studio. Like, what is the definition, like, in the rock and metal world for producer that's going to be different from what people may recognize a producer in hip hop as?
Well, a producer, I guess you would say, back in the early days, was the guy that kind of made sure everything was going all right. He was the one that booked the studio. He was the one that made sure the musicians were paid. He was the one that made sure that, everybody had all the accommodations, and was kind of like a tour manager almost, more or less, right? And then it kind of evolved into the producer was an engineer, okay? So like Phil Spector and like, the Wall of Sound and, those guys that did all those crazy big records back in the day, Eddie Kramer and all them. And so you were primarily and not always, not all producers back then also were engineers. So sometimes the guy, when it evolved a little bit more into the musical thing, he would be the guy that was primarily listening for the song arrangements, listening to like, what does a song need to be done? Does a new part need to be written? Like, I need to tell this guy he's playing the wrong style for a solo, or these background vocals need to be like, we need a doo-wop in here, or whatever. Like, what does the song need? It was more like a song type of thing. And some of the producers were also engineers. So, like that guy might be like, because most musicians back then, like they didn't know how to record.
Yeah.
So, you had to trust a guy, an engineer or producer or whatever to, I hear this sound, on the record, like that's what I want to hear too. Like, you hear the guitar, or you hear the bass or the drums or whatever. So like you walk in and it's like, they're the ones that are like setting up all the microphones, because you're like, I don't know where to point the microphone, or what that gadget does with those knobs, and like you were saying earlier, the mixing board with all the faders and shit.
Yeah.
So
those things are intimidating.
So I would say, like, like hip hop producers and stuff like that, like they're more like almost now a creative thing. Like they can, like you were saying, they make the beats and all that stuff. Whereas in the rock world, it's more of an opposite thing.
It's like the director, as like in comparison.
Yeah, like a director or a guy that knows. That's where the engineering term came from, because it's like, the Abbey Road guys doing the Beatles, they fucking wore lab coats, dude.
Right.
Like they wore these white lab coats. Like that was their job. Like they were these, like, almost like if you were to say, like in today, like a computer guy, like a computer wizard. Like you walk in and this guy just knows fucking everything about computers, right? Back then it was like, I don't know what all these knobs and faders and all these fucking gadgets do. Like, I'm just a fucking guitar player.
Yeah.
So I guess, but then, as things went, and the way that I did it was like, I always wanted to learn how to do this, how to do that. Like, what does this do? What does that do? And it turned into, but also I had to work on the songs as well. So like, and work with the musicians. So you're sitting there and you're responsible for getting all the sounds and stuff and running all the equipment, but you're also the guy that's like, you're playing too fast, or you're telling the drummer, don't hit the snare on that part of the beat, or you're speeding up, or you could, as it went, like the more complex part of the job, like you're working on arrangements with the band, or you're singing a melody to the singer, like, try it like this instead of like the way you did it, or that song, let's cut that part out entirely. So it could be a lot of things. And so today's producer and my side of the world is like, it could be a lot of jobs, yeah, all in one thing.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I was just, obviously you're doing tons of stuff, and you do, like you mentioned, you over the time you learned everything. So you're doing production, engineering, mixing, mastering, and even composing. We'll talk about that.
Right. So like, if you're like a hip hop producer, like, there's probably guys out there like kind of like how I did it, where you're going to this guy and he's like, I'll give you a beat. And then, the rapper or whatever is going to be like, or the artist is going to be like, all right, that they'll work with the producer guy to come up with something they can rap over or sing over or whatever. But then that same guy, he knows how to use the computer and all the outboard gear and all the microphones and all that stuff. And sometimes even that guy's the mixer in the end too, So, but mixing is a different animal than producing. So, it's the final, when you put all the pieces together after it's been recorded. So yeah, that's another ball game.
Make everything sound the way it's supposed to sound.
Yeah, exactly. So you could work with somebody that's like the best producer, but he fucking sucks as a mixer, like it'll come back sounding like shit.
Absolutely.
So then you got to find a mixer, and then the mixing's done, and then you got to find somebody to master it, because the mastering guy's like the next in line. He's the final ear on everything. He's got to make sure everything can be delivered right, make sure that it plays good on every format and all that stuff. That's the mastering is. So there could be other people involved with that as well.
Definitely a lot of stuff. So as you kind of continued on, you started you had some pretty big things real early on, like you ended up linking up with Hatebreed, which obviously became extremely successful, and you worked with a lot. And then even just a few years into your career, one of their records was Grammy nominated, right?
Yeah. Well, I've had 3 Grammy nominated records so far. So
congratulations on that.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, that's pretty crazy when you think about it. But yeah, Hatebreed was nominated, and Shadows Fall was too. We didn't win, but that's all good, But Hatebreed, another band that I've worked with for a long time, and we've all grew together, and we've made some great records over the course of like 20 years, and we still work together. Like their newest record out now is I did that record as well.
It's so amazing. So was there? So it's a strange question to ask, I guess, but was there like a time like you're doing all this work, you're in the studio, you're meeting these bands, you're also learning as you go, but nobody, obviously, like you said, the bands don't really know much yet. Was there ever a moment like where something happened, like obviously like them get like, the record you produced getting nominated for a Grammy, you're like, okay, I did it, like I made it, like it's official now, I'm not the kid learning anymore. Like when was there like a moment in time where you're like, okay, I made it, Mom, or you know what I mean? Like,
you know what? I still to this day don't feel that way. Like I'm still learning, you know, and I still feel like, you know, it's when I look at everything I did on paper, it's like, whoa, wow. I start to think, oh, I totally forgot about that or this or that. But, you know, even now, like, for instance, I'm working with Queensryche right now, who I'm sure you've heard that name before.
Absolutely.
They're, you know, really, really huge rock metal band that's been around since like 1981 or something like that. So, you know, I've worked with them, you know, several times, and I go into the whole thing saying like, how can we outdo the last thing? Like, I'm never going to be comfortable. Like, it's like, we got to do better. So I'm never really constantly like ever taking anything for granted or ever like saying that I'm in some sort of space that's like safe, I guess you could say. So even though like, you know, I've had that kind of thing happen, like it doesn't really, okay, that happened, let's move forward is the way that I do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. But I mean, you're definitely doing big shit, man, and we want to at least acknowledge it. But you know,
well, thanks, man. Constantly
growing and learning is also a big deal too. So you've worked with tons of artists, tons of huge bands in that world. I want to talk about, I guess, 2012, 2013, you ended up linking up with Rob Zombie for the first time. How did that come about?
That's kind of an interesting conversation. A good friend of mine was his tour manager at the time, and he introduced me to Rob. And at the time, Rob was going to take a little break, and he was going to record a record, but he didn't want to go to like a studio and like be in a studio all day and all that stuff. And my buddy was like, I know a guy that could come down and bring all the gear you would need, and you'd be able to do it at your house. And he was like, really? So that's pretty much how that happened. But I wasn't the producer on that record. I was more like the assistant and like an assistant engineer, and I provided the gear and stuff. And I was on call to like kind of be around, you know, whenever I was needed. And I did a lot of stuff, but I wasn't the producer. So Bob Marlette was the producer on that record.
Your first meeting though, right?
What's that?
But that was like the first meeting, your first interaction, and kind of how it...
Yeah, that was the first time like I ever met Rob Zombie was right around that time. It was like 2012. And dude, like he didn't know anything about me, which is actually we kind of laugh about that now. And like I didn't go in there going, yeah, I do all this stuff and I'm this and that. I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna fucking keep my cool and do my thing and not get in the way, and he'll learn who I am as, you know, as a normal person would. Like I didn't, you know, he didn't even really know what I did, which is kind of funny. Like I changed the battery in his car.
That's crazy.
Like honestly, like, you know, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but it was like his car wouldn't start or whatever, and because they got back from tour and it was like sitting around for a while, and it was like his SUV or whatever.
Yeah.
And my buddy, who I told you introduced me to him, said, "Oh, you know, Chris could probably go run to the AutoZone and get a battery." And I was like, "Oh, fuck it, I don't give a shit."
Sure, yeah.
So I put a battery in his car. I didn't give a shit. I was like, you know, I'll sweep the floor. I'll do whatever. Like, you know, that's my attitude towards things. So that was my starting relationship with him. And when the record was done, he hit me up and he was like, I'm trying to remember how it exactly went, but he was like, "I'm going to be doing a DVD, and I hear you're a pretty good mixer. Would you be interested in taking a crack at mixing it?" And I was just like, fuck yeah, man.
Yeah, who says no to that?
So, like, I can remember it was like winter time, and it was fucking like snowstorm, like a blizzard. And I remember driving there, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna make it. You know, I had a Jeep, and because I brought gear to his house. You know, because like he doesn't have any gear or studio or whatever. He's just like, you bring your shit, man, and fucking make it work. So, so I set up and stuff, and I can remember it was like super cold out, and there was probably like already like 1.5 feet of snow, and I can remember hearing him like shoveling to get to his outbuilding where I was setting up, and he comes in with this like wearing this it looked like a buffalo, full-on buffalo like fur. I think it's almost the same thing that's in one of his newest videos, the Crow Killer. Uh-huh. And he just looked like this mountain man, like covered in snow. And he's coming in. And he's like, "How's everything going?" So anyway, so I ended up mixing the live DVD, and then from there on, like he would just call me, be like, "Hey, what are you doing in like February?" Or he'll text me or whatever. And still to this day, that's what he does with me. He just texts me, "Hey, what are you doing? You available?"
That's awesome. So then you did the DVD, and then you ended up actually producing and mixing the next record, right?
Correct. Yep. And so I started to work with him more often, and every time is always a journey, and it's always kick ass, man. Like, he's awesome to work with.
I can imagine. So like for you, like working with all these bands, and like is that like, obviously as someone who's a fan of Rob Zombie, is that still like do you still have moments like, or someone like Queensrÿche or something, you're like, holy shit, like this is what I'm doing now? Like, do you have those moments?
Every once in a while that yeah, sometimes that hits me, and I'll be like, wow, like, there was a time I was working with Mick Mars, and I was working with him on some solo stuff, and I can remember I was just like, I'm fucking eating dinner with Mick Mars right now at his house, and I'm shitting in his toilet.
Right. This is happening right now. This is my life.
Like, I'm literally like taking a dump in his toilet. It's fucking Mick Mars' house. So like, yeah, every once in a while, like it'll hit me like that, but then sometimes it's just like, all right, these people they're just people, and when they're like in their other element or whatever, like they're not on tour or whatever, they're just normal people.
Yeah.
So it gets to a point after a while where it's like, what's up, man? Like, right. Let's get to work.
Hey, Rob. Yeah, it's just, I mean, some people, especially like Rob Zombie, definitely just seems like larger than life.
Rob is actually super, super cool. Like, he makes sure everything is fucking good. Like, is everything good with, with everything? How was your drive? Like he's just super cool.
That's awesome. So obviously you've worked with a ton of people, but we're talking about Rob. I want to finish the Rob portion. So then obviously you guys worked together a few times. You did the newest one, the Lunar Injection Kool-Aid Eclipse Conspiracy, that came out this year, which is doing really well.
Yep.
And then at some point he got you to do composing with 31. Is that something you had done previously?
No, it wasn't. So
how in the world?
That's another kind of story there, Well, 31 was actually John 5 was the composer on that film, and I was the music editor. So I was hired as the music editor on the film, and which is like kind of like the technical editor guy who, once you get all the music, you have to work with the editor, make sure like that all the edits they do on the film like go across with the music, because every time they're cutting in that film, it's cutting the music in the same spot. So you have to fix or make sure that it all still fits in the same space that they might have cut in the cues of the scenes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was my job for that.
Right spot, yeah.
What's that?
I said the ominous tones is not in the right spot anymore in the
Well, yeah, right. It's like, okay, they cut this many frames out here and visually, and well, now there's missing, the audio is like chopped and kind of moved, and it's not in time anymore, you know. So that was like what I was hired to do for that. So John ended up getting sick, and he was back out in LA, and so Rob was like, you know, we have a deadline. Do you think you might want to try doing a cue? And I was like, all right, I'll take a crack at it. And he, you know, came over and he kind of showed me like what he was looking for, you know. And so I came up with some stuff, and he liked it. So I ended up doing some cues on that film, and that's how it ended up happening on that.
Wow. So then you did it. You returned with 3 from Hell, and were you brought in just to do it that time, to compose the?
Right. So he asked me if I would be interested in working on 3 from Hell. I was like, sure. And I can remember the first thing that he gave me to do was the machete fight scene. And he told me he wanted like a Morricone type of spaghetti western fight music. And I was like, oh boy, this is going to be fucking difficult as fuck, because it's like, you know, that's the best fucking composer in the world, really, you know, as far as like classic stuff like that. So I can remember I busted my ass on it. It took me about 2 weeks to get that done. And that was also the end of the film. So it was like a huge section. Yeah. And it was kind of like a test for me, because if I couldn't pull that off and come up with something that would work, then what are you going to do? You know what I mean? You'd have to get somebody else to do it, because that's definitely what he wanted for that scene. So I can remember showing it to him, and he's like, I like it, you know. And I was like, fuck, it was a load off of me at the time. But the music in the film there was so many different styles of music that had to be created for that. It pushed me to the limit creatively and everything, and I had to put everything that I know into to get that movie done, and it was super, super hard.
That's awesome, though. But that's, I mean, I'm assuming you enjoyed that, the creative having to jolt those juices and the creative.
I did, but it's like it was strenuous, because then it's like, you know, okay, you get a cue done, and you're like, whew, all right, that one was fucking tough. And then it's like, he'll be like, all right, I need mariachi music for this one. And I'm thinking, all right, now you need mariachi music. Like, I've never fucking done anything with mariachi. So what do? You know, you got to fucking figure it out, man. So that's what I did. I figured it out and made it work. So like that was like the biggest learning experience for me, because I guess it was, you know, some composers might be like, oh, they do the spooky sound thing and their synthesizers and, you know, bowed cymbals and it's eerie and stuff, and that's it. Okay. Not a Rob film. A Rob film has all kinds of stuff going on in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're creating the score and the composing the music. And you're creating all this stuff. You're not just like finding something that, oh, this sounds like mariachi, I'll put this on. Like,
right. Yeah, you got to create it, man. It doesn't exist. So it's like that, you know, whatever's on the TV in that movie, I made the music for it.
That's crazy.
It's not like what was really there, you know, that's the movies. So, yeah, so that was a crazy experience, man. And so it opened up another world to me where I'm like, man, this is great. Like, I want to do more of it. So, so that's where I'm at now with that.
That's awesome. So is there those are the only 2 so far, right? Is there more things you're working on, or I guess, or stuff you could talk about?
I did do some cues for some other films and stuff, but I didn't get the gig. I didn't get the job. Sometimes you're a backup, you know, like you might just be the director's like second choice, and sometimes like, you know, somebody the guy they might want might not be available, and but they still got to see what you can do. So, you know, I've done some stuff like that, but yeah, I've only worked on 2 that have been released.
Oh, I gotcha. That's awesome though. I mean, like I said, it's a whole nother world. You really are the jack of all trades, at least in the music world at this point.
Well, it's like, look, I don't want to just be doing a death metal record every fucking week, or just doing a like say I'm working with Queensryche, and like I'd love to vary it up. It's got like, or else it's just gonna get stale.
No, absolutely. I'm sure composing a film is a definite change.
Well, yeah, especially when you gotta come up with all kinds of crazy stuff, like like on the 3 from Hell movie.
That's so awesome though. So with all the stuff you've been doing, all the production you've been doing, obviously you're creating music for the movies, and I'm sure you've probably played on some of these records as backup or anything. But have you like ever gone back into wanting to like play music, like be a professional musician, or start a band your own self and not do it for other people?
I have thought about it, and I am writing some stuff for myself, and I do catalog it, and I'm really into as a hobby now, but it can still be used. I'm really into like 80s synthy music, so I have a whole shitload of that. Like it sounds like it could be in like Knight Rider or something, like the Knight Rider theme song, or like I've been watching a lot of Miami Vice. I love Jan Hammer. I love his musical work, and it's some people might be like, oh, that's outdated and cheesy, but like there's something about it. Like the me 25 years ago would be like, this sucks. Right. But now for some reason, like I'm getting into synths, and I'm kind of over the whole guitar bass type of thing, and drums. I want to learn and explore more. So like when I get in front of a synthesizer or something like that, especially with like knobs, and I love analog synths and analog drum machines and all that kind of stuff. So I love tinkering with like sounds and putting them through pedals and coming up with cool ideas. And so that's what I've been doing now lately. But also I have been playing some guitar and, writing some stuff. And maybe it'll be used someday, so maybe it won't.
That's awesome though. But yeah, it seems like it almost seems natural progression for a man who works with sounds every day. You're just constantly looking for new sounds, so it only makes sense that you would go to the sounds you never used before with the synth.
Right, and there are times where like I do play on some of these records, small parts or whatever, and sometimes the band are like, I don't care if you do it, or if I come up with an idea, sometimes it never gets replayed. And it just stays, and it's like, I don't make a big deal out of it or anything, and I'm just like, oh, cool, like I might listen back to that song someday and I'll be like, I remember I did that part,
Yeah. That's cool. And I mean, obviously with the music composing, what you described with the sound you may be creating now would probably be a wonderful backtrack for many a video game.
Well, yeah, video games have been talked about actually. Which is funny you bring that up. It's just a matter of time before maybe that might come to me, maybe. Who knows? But yeah, video games is another world of composing actually. I don't really know, like I'm not an expert at it, but I don't know how the music is placed, or like if you watch anything in the video game to get ideas or whatever, but as in films, because in films it's the emotions of the music and what you're doing is what can create what the scene is all about. You can make sad music over something that's funny, and it's fucking sad now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like in Rob's movies, he'll put some music over a killing scene, like Slim Whitman.
Yeah. There's definitely some. It's definitely a different world when you're watching the zombie films. There's definitely some moments where the things, or like when people are getting murdered and for some reason you're smiling because of the music.
Yeah, like the clown scene in Free From Hell. It's like he's playing that movie or that music on the boombox that I created all that music. It's like din 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 din, and he's jumping around and he's about to get killed.
That's so awesome, man. That's such a cool thing to do. So obviously you've worked with tons and tons of very, very popular bands. we could probably talk about it all night. But is there any like, not like favorites, but like standout moments in the studio, or like different things where you're like, of all the people you worked with, you're like, man, that one time with Shadows Fall was crazy, or like, holy shit, I'm working with the Casualties, or you know, as you meant, you know.
Yeah, like, I mean, yeah, sometimes that happens. I would really have to think hard at that, because like I said, and like you said, there's a lot of them. So it's like, I mean, I can remember the first time I recorded Agnostic Front, and I heard Roger come out of the monitors, and I'm like, wow, he has such a distinct voice. And I was just like, he's a legend, you know? So I was just like, that was one that definitely was like, whoa, you know? Hearing him come out of the speakers was just like, you know, because I was an Agnostic Front fan growing up, and I was just like, wow, you know, this is amazing. So that was one, you know. Another one that was really cool was working with Kirk Winstein from Crowbar.
Oh yeah.
He's just got such a unique guitar style, that sludgy, you know, down-tuned riffing style. And I can remember when I was working with him, it was like, wow, like this guy, just watching him play, I was like, that's like what I would hear coming out of the, you know, putting the tape in the car and hearing like Crowbar for the first time. Like, there he is, like riffing in front of me, you know? So it does happen sometimes.
That's wild. And you did the Zombie Manson collab too, right?
Yeah, I did that. I did a cover of Helter Skelter.
That's so cool. Did you get to work with Manson on that, or did he just?
I didn't get to work with him in person. He was holed up in Europe at the time, and the schedules just weren't going to work for him to get back. So he sent some tracks, but you know, I had to go through them all and make them work and stuff. So
that's still awesome, man.
There was still a little bit there, but no, I didn't get to actually be in the same room with him.
Still dope. That's just saying, just to me, that saying like I did Manson and Zombie on a Beatles track, like that's just like that's just
that's pretty cool for sure, you know. And like hearing the, you know, getting the tracks, and you're like sifting through them, and like, you know, what has he got here, what do I got? And you know, it's like he's isolated, you know, you get to hear there's nothing else with him, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, just a blink. That's so dope. That's awesome, man. Yeah. So obviously you're still working on stuff. The Rob Zombie record came out earlier this year. I know you got a few Cruel Hand, Todd LaTorra, The Letter Black. Any big projects going on right now, or things coming out soon that you want to make sure people look forward to checking out? Or
I just finished mixing this band that's really cool. They're called Spirit Adrift, and they're on Century Media. Real cool band. They have an old school style of like rock meets metal going on. A little bit of a 70s vibe, but real natural and organic, and real cool stuff. There's some synths in there, and some, you know, like dual leads, like type of stuff, and more. It's not like growling or vocals or anything like that. So I just finished that, and I have been working with Queensryche on a new album. I was just down in Florida working with them, and we were actually at a mansion doing the recording, which was interesting. And it was Hulk Hogan's old mansion.
Oh wow!
So that was very unique.
Yeah.
So there's another story there. Like, here I am working in, you know, when he had the TV show back in the day. There I am, like sitting there working in his old house.
That's crazy.
It's just like fucking weird, dude.
Maybe you can produce his next record.
I heard he's a fucking killer bass player. He's got to give me a call.
He did that record back in the 80s, I think.
Well, if you read up on Hulk Hogan, like, he started out as a musician. Like, he played in some sports and stuff, but apparently, like, you know, he was like full on, like, wanted to play bass.
That's awesome. Well, you're always having problems.
So maybe he'll hear this and he'll call me.
There you go. Hit him up, man. Go find Queensryche at your old house. They know how to get in touch with them.
Yeah, I'll be like, yo, man, like, let's cut some fucking songs in your old house. Like,
How dope, man. That'd be awesome.
that you don't own anymore.
It's crazy.
I don't know.
So even though you're super busy, you're doing multiple amazing bands, producing and mixing and mastering and composing. You actually still like people can book you still, right? Like you're still available. Probably not very often, but
well, like, you know, like, yeah, hit up my management, and you know, then there you go. Like, we go from there.
So if you're a band out there and you want to have ZEUSS credited on your record, go to ZEUSSPRODUCER.com and maybe you can make it happen.
That's right. Go to ZEUSSPRODUCER.com and, you know, hit the email button, and we could make magic, man.
That'd be awesome. If I was in a band, which I'm not, I would hire you just so I could have you credited, just so I could be like, the guy who did all this also did my shit.
Well, yeah, sometimes there's those people too. And then when I find out how good they are, I'm like, oh boy, they're not good.
They're not good.
Oh God.
What happened?
I'll be like, how do I get out of this fucking gig?
Right?
It's like, can you credit me under a different name, please?
And I've been in those situations. Trust me.
I can only imagine once you get to that level. It's like, can I have a different name?
I mean, dude, I'm talking. I could go way back and be in those situations. Like, you know, when I was like in the local scene, and it's like you just record whoever walks in the door, and it's like,
nope.
You should have seen some of the shit walking in the door.
I can only imagine.
They pay the hourly rate. They get it. Yeah.
I've heard some pretty bad, you know, underground rappers that, you know, in our scene. It's like, oh God, no shit.
Yeah, man. Some of them, they're hungover. Like, I had one guy, he was just throwing up all day, man. Didn't get anything done.
You should have just recorded him throwing up and be like, that's the best thing that you've recorded all day.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
There's your track, man.
There's your track.
I said I got a couple more questions for you. Where does the name ZEUSS? Where did you acquire that?
Where'd that come from? How did that start? All right, I was waiting for that, but you guys didn't mention it, so I was like, all right, I'm not gonna tell you.
We're a slow burn. We're a slow burn.
Yeah. I was so caught up in the story.
So all right, so my last name is Harris, right? Harris, Harris, and back in the day, I would show up at band practice, and my buddy would be like, "Hey, Roos." He was like, you know, like we would pull in the parking lot or whatever, and he'd be like, "Hey, Roos," like that. So, "Hey, Roos" turned into "Hey, ZEUSS." Then he started fucking with me, and he was like calling me "Hey, ZEUSS," and then that shortened to ZEUSS. And he started calling me that in front of people, and then people like, "Oh, hi, how you doing, ZEUSS?" And I'm like, "Dude, what the fuck is with the ZEUSS shit?" So then we were gonna put a demo tape out, and we were all like, "We're not gonna use our real names." Like, so he's like, "You're ZEUSS, but you can't spell it like, you know, Zeus." And I was like, "Well, why don't I spell it like Dr. Seuss?" So that's how I started to spell it. So I spelled it ZEUSS, right? So when I was in the band or whatever, like, then people started calling me Zeus, and I was just like, all right, I'll roll with that. So I rolled with that, and then when I started doing records, I was like, that's when I had to make a decision. I was like, all right, but there's some other like cool producers out there that have unique names, like Mutt Lang. Like, you fucking remember Mutt Lang, right?
Yeah.
You know? Or you remember some of these, like, and actually, you know, in hip hop, like, they all got a fucking name, right? So I was like, I don't want to be like Chris Harris, like, on the records, because it's just like there's a million of them.
Yeah.
There's a kabillion of them. It's like if you were like named Mike Smith,
right? Yeah.
Right? Or Rob Jones or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, so what? Like, that's just gonna go in one ear and out the other. So I started using my ZEUSS name as like, that's who did the record. And dude, it fucking worked, because people were like, I heard of you.
Fuck yeah.
You know, so still to this day, I've been using the name for a long time, and it's just, it's too late to change it now.
Well, I mean, essentially, that's your stage name. I mean, even though you're not on the stage, but your stage is the music. I mean, and you know.
You nailed it. Exactly. So I just kept it kind of going, you know, and there you are. So there you go. That's the story.
That's awesome.
I mean, it kind of sounds like I follow like, YouTubers that have names that are like, well, I guess I'll roll with this for now, and then they blow up on that name, and then they're like, fuck, I got to use this name forever.
Well, it's kind of like this, right? You always hear that story from like that dude, like, okay, what's that dude's name? And they go, oh, that dude's Smiley, and you're like, why do they call him Smiley?
Right.
And then the dude then you'll find out the dude got called Smiley like in grade school because he was always smiling, right? And now the fucker's gonna be called Smiley forever.
Right. It's like,
you know what I mean? So it's kind of like that too. It's like it got to that point where it's like, all right, well, it's too late now. I'm fucked. I'm that name,
It's like, God damn it, why'd I blow up with the name Dr. Buttchug? Son of a bitch.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky. I didn't blow up with like, some sort of like, like Smiley.
Yeah, right. Then you gotta walk around.
Produced by Smiley.
Then you're on TMZ, be like, this Smiley guy isn't smiling in this picture. He's a douche.
What the fuck's wrong with him?
Yeah, I mean, now there's gonna be some dude named Smiley hitting me up. You fucking asshole.
Why are you talking shit about me?
It's like,
sorry, Smiley.
It's like it's all factual, but fuck, man, shit.
We love you, Smiley.
Thanks, Smiley.
Yeah, wherever you are, dude, I meant no disrespect.
That's awesome, man.
We understand the struggle.
Well, you're definitely a god in the rock world, so it kind of works out. There you go.
So that's the name story right there.
Oh, yeah. I spelled that thing wrong like 8 times.
Yeah, I actually had to tell you.
I even sent him the
correct.
I spelled it wrong 2 different ways as well. Yeah, I fucked that up real bad.
You know what?
It's
not the first time.
The dude already fucked it up. Like, how is he going to be interviewing me?
Right? Just as bad. Just as bad.
Right, just as bad.
Hell yeah, man. Well, that's the shit. I do got one more question for you. We asked all of our guests the same shit because we're completely unoriginal. But essentially, you got 3 records, 3 albums, not necessarily ones you produced, just in general, that either inspire you as an artist or as a person. Maybe it's the one you cry to when you're sad, or the one you punch the wall to when you're mad. Whatever it is, just 3 records that you could not live without. What would they be?
Okay, 3. I could name probably a couple, but that's tough because it's only 3, and it depends on the mood. But
you get one wild card.
I would definitely say Master of Puppets by Metallica.
Dope.
For sure. The Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden. And a third one would be hard. I'm trying to think. Maybe, and again, I could change my mind like 80 times, and you guys know that's how it goes, right? So I would say, like, how about like a Led Zeppelin or a Black Sabbath record or something? Like, I'll just say Black Sabbath Volume 4.
There you go.
I could always put that on and be like, and listen to it all the way through.
Hell yeah.
It's always subjective. Every time you get asked it's going to be a different answer.
I was just
right, and like, but tomorrow, like, I could be like, man, I should have said this record, Like,
as soon as we're done, you're gonna be like, damn it, why didn't I say?
Yeah,
I just like the
so,
weird. I was hoping for like Dirty Dancing soundtrack or something off the wall.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't know. It's a tough one. That's just a tough one. So those are my answers for now.
That's awesome. Well, they're all good answers because that's who you are and that's what you like, man. Well, that's the shit. Well, I don't know. We appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us, man. It was super awesome getting to know you. And obviously, like I said, we could talk forever about all the hundreds of things you've produced, and I can't wait to see what happens in the future. If you guys want to learn more about him, go to ZEUSSPRODUCER.com. You may be even able to book him for a session if you're lucky enough and fortunate enough. But either way, there's a whole list of all the projects, or at least some of the projects, from Rob Zombie to Hatebreed to Kingsreich to the Casualties and more. You're a legend, man. Like already. And
well, thanks, man. Like I said, I don't see myself that way, but you know, thanks for the compliment, man. And there's a lot more coming, and some stuff I can't talk about, and just keep tuned in, and you know, there'll be some really cool stuff by the end of the year that you'll see. Well, and then maybe we can do another show or something.
Do a follow-up.
Yeah, absolutely, man. As I say, I want to officially welcome you to our Replicon Radio family. Whatever you got going on, anytime, hit us up. We'll chat again, or we can at least get the word out, whatever's going on. And yeah, it was a pleasure chatting, man, and we appreciate it, and we'll definitely stay in touch. You got any last words or any shout-outs or anything you wanted to plug, or tell people where to follow you or anything like that?
Yeah, like, I mean, well, I'm not on Facebook, but I'm on Instagram. You can find me at ZEUSS PRODUCER, and you know, and then I have the website and stuff, and that's about it. You know, I kind of keep up on the Instagram thing and post things here and there, and you might find if you watch my stories, sometimes I'll put some of my soundtrack music in my pictures and stuff like that, or I might blurb something that if you miss it, you're gonna miss it. So sometimes there's Easter eggs in my posts or whatever, like might be something I'm working on, and you got to just be good to find it.
The man slips on the social media posts.
So anyways, it was good talking to you guys, Paul, Tony, Big Roo, and let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely, brother. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you,
we're
sir.
actually going to play some of the stuff from some of the records you produced, and then we're going to come back and hang out with everybody else. So if you guys are tuned in on YouTube, head on over to repliconradio.com so you can enjoy the music, all of which was produced and or mixed by the man ZEUSS. So we appreciate you, brother, and we'll definitely keep in touch, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, take care, guys. I'll talk to you later.
You too. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Peace.
Yep, bye.